Hey Renz Youth, this is Pastor David. I just wanted to say, hey, I've been thinking and praying about y'all. I hope that y'all are doing well. I just wanted to come and give you a little bit of a devotional word. Essentially, I've been thinking about what in the world would I want to hear if I were in your shoes. And to be honest, there's a lot that I don't know if I would like to hear. But one word did come to mind, and it's a kind of a crazy word, and you probably don't hear me saying it very often, but savage. That's the one message that kind of resonated, at least with me. And so I hope that it resonates with you, because in this COVID time, and as you're home, and I know that you're probably playing video games, or you're reading books, or you're going outside, or you're doing other types of activities, but they're more contained. It can be very easy to say, you know what, I'm done. I'm not going to do much. I'm not going to do much for the kingdom. But this is actually the time where you need to be savage. You need to be savage about your faith. You need to be no holds barred in pursuing Christ. And so we're going to look at, over the next 3 weeks, over 3 different types of people in the Bible. The first you probably figured out, and you probably know, is that Paul. You may not ever put that category with Paul, that he was savage, but ultimately he was. Think about really what he did. That cat was shipwrecked, bitten by a snake, stoned, rejected, beaten, done all these things to him, and yet he continued to communicate the truth and the love of Jesus Christ. I think about a passage in Acts as he goes on and he talks about it. It's Acts chapter 14. I'm going to give you a summary of it. Acts 14 verses 8 through 20. Essentially, he and Paul and Barnabas were going and preaching the good news in Lystra and Derbe, and they came across a man in need of healing. And so Paul, seeing this, he acted, because the man had faith to be healed, and the man was healed. And the crowd around him all of a sudden started thinking that they were gods incarnate, and that gods is the little g. They were gods incarnate. They thought Zeus and Apollo had come down to them. And the religious leaders, they did not like the attention that Paul and Barnabas were getting. Paul and Barnabas didn't like the attention that they were getting. They were trying to say, no, that was Jesus Christ. It was Jesus Christ. Well, in a moment, those religious leaders actually were able to turn that crowd against Paul and Barnabas, to the point where they actually stoned Paul and killed him. The believers of the city, they got around and they prayed over Paul, and Paul got up. And so in that story, we have to ask the question, if you were in Paul's shoes, when would you give up? Would you have given up when the crowd was cheering your name? Would you have given up when you started feeling the pressure from the religious leaders? Would you have given up right before they started throwing stones at you? Would you have given up after the fact? Well, you would have been dead. But Paul, he gets stoned. He's either dead or practically dead. Believers pray about him, and they pray over him, and he gets up. And he has a decision to make. Is he going to run away, or is he going to persevere for the cause of Christ? And Paul, to his benefit, to his gumption, that man was savage. He got up and went back into the same city that stoned him and preached Jesus. Later, he continues on in his missionary journeys. He continues to go and preach and proclaim. But about 2 chapters later, in Acts chapter 16, we find that he actually goes back. All right, so think about putting yourself in his shoes. Would you have went up and went into the town, or ran away after you were stoned? And then, if you would have went into the town, would you have gone back into the town? See, there's some points that I want to make mention of because of how Paul interacted. First and foremost, though it may not be biblically connected, there is a strong possibility that Timothy heard about what happened to Paul. And so when Paul goes back in Acts chapter 16 and he joins up and gathers this young protege in Timothy, he must have heard about what happened to Paul and how he came back. And so if Paul would have not persevered, we may not have had Timothy. There's a strong possibility of that. So how does this apply to us? Well, I think Christ has called us to be savage, to persevere in the midst of whatever odds come our way. Because Jesus does not want part-time service. He wants full-time action. He wants us all in. I wish I could always say that I have always given everything in everything that I've done, but that's not the case. Little do y'all know about me, I actually played trumpet in middle school. I started out in trumpet and then I went to baritone because the notes were easier and so on. But I couldn't get music. And so I quit. I stopped playing music. Sports came easier to me, so I did not persevere with music. And now I actually kind of regret that I did not stick with it, because ultimately I think that I would be playing music right now more than playing sports, because let's be real, my bones ache, my bones hurt. So I hope that doesn't happen to you guys. But what does it look like for you right now to persevere? Well, first off, I think it means that you need to first and foremost persevere in prayer and in the studying of your word, of the Bible. Don't give up. It's gonna get hard. And when it gets hard, continue to pray. Continue to study the word. Next, it comes with probably your family relationships. Your families are gonna go through some pretty rough times. And I'm not talking about big things. I'm talking about just normal interday interactions where you're gonna get annoyed at your sister, you're gonna get annoyed at your brother, you're gonna get annoyed at your parents, and it's gonna get hard. But Jesus has called you to persevere in loving kindness, persevere in obedience, persevere in self-control. You need to be savage in your walk with Christ, putting to death laziness, putting to death the lustful thoughts. And I'm not talking about things that are just centered on inappropriate things. I'm talking about the things that you desire to gratify yourself, whether that be video games, or whether that be food, or whether that be just watching so much TV just because you want to veg. And so Paul gives us an illustration of being savage. Would you give up if you were in his spot? Would I give up? So I want you to reflect on a couple of questions. What is holding you back from being all in and following Jesus? Number 2, how can you be savage in your pursuit of Christ right now? I want you to name about 3 things. I think you can name 3 things. Don't name easy things. Name hard things. It was hard that Paul got stoned and got up and went back into Lystra. And then finally, I would like you, which does not necessarily pertain, I don't want you to give up in praying for one another. I want you to persevere in praying for those around you and those in your youth group.